Batman's Rogues Gallery is thought of to be one of the most important and most recognizable for any superhero, rivaling that of Spider-Man or Superman. Most of these villains are easily identifiable to audiences only tangentially familiar with the mythos of the Dark Knight. Whether it's the Adam West TV show, the various animated series, the Arkham games, or any adaptations to film, for more or less, people are able to identify each villain as well as their relationship to Batman. Now, in saying this, creating new villains that feel like they fit within the tapestry of the Dark Knight's universe is a difficult task, and it's seldom done that the characters that are newly created feel like they've just always belonged there. Except for Harley Quinn, who was created in the Batman animated series and has somehow established herself along the lines of that iconography for DC to refer to her as the fourth pillar of the company. When creating new characters, whether it's heroes or villains, they typically are either a response to the actions of the leading hero and existing within the universe, or they are introduced as a retcon to further integrate themselves with importance. The integral DNA of comic books incorporates aspects of soap operas, with the never-ending story approach to the second act. If these stories aren't able to come to a conclusion, then there needs to be dramatic elements that propel the story forward, and also retaining readership. My favorite method of creating new characters that are instantly integrated into the universe derives from Brian Michael Bendis and Michael Gaydos's Alias. The series serves as the creation of Jessica Jones and revealing that she was even high school classmates with Peter Parker, but her entire life has gone by in a section of the universe that the audience could not be privy to. It's instantly ingratiating the audience to this character, as it could be explained that she was always there but never given the spotlight due to the tragic nature of her life and lived experiences. On the other hand, you have characters that are created whose single utilization is nothing more than an antiquated method to assert importance on the character for the leading role's backstory. I mean, honestly, how many secret family members or long forgotten friends can one hero truly have? At what point is a trope overstaying its welcome and seemingly only utilized to establish this new character in reference to the leading role and making sure that there's as many entries as possible on their Wikipedia page? In saying that, today we're going to talk about Hush and H2SH, the new book by Jeph Loeb and Jim Lee that's publishing for some reason over 20 years after the original series was published. But before we get into that, let's hear a word from our sponsors. I want to extend a sincere thank you to Forensic and all of my supporters over on Patreon. If you want these videos early, access to the community Discord, or just knowing what I'm doing between videos behind the scenes, you can subscribe for as low as $1 per month. And we also just opened up the Comic Krackle merch shop, so if you didn't pull the trigger before and you want to do it now for yourself or a loved one this holiday season, go and buy it. Please. And if you don't feel like looking up the Patreon or the merch shop, I did you a favor and I put it in the description down below. Aren't I so nice? I know. But anyways, back to the show. Hush was a 12-issue storyline appearing in the main Batman title from 2002 to 2003. It was written by Jeph Loeb, penciled by Jim Lee, inked by Scott Williams, and colored by Alex Sinclair. And I'll tell you what, the story is okay. That's it. That's the review. Alright, good job everyone. We're gonna cut it there. I don't know why I did that bit. I'm in here alone. Okay, now in my honest opinion, Batman Hush is not a bad story. I'm just not a fan. We open up the story with Batman shutting down a kidnapping gone wrong, as a child of a Gotham socialite was abducted by Killer Croc. Now, Croc in this state has reverted to being more animalistic, so Batman doesn't really understand why he's trying to get money, it seems like it's for somebody else. Now, after Batman had thwarted the plans of Killer Croc, the authorities show up and try to assert their dominance over Batman. But it seems like Jeph Loeb and Jim Lee weren't really working in unison, because while the script says FBI, one of the agents is wearing CIA on the back. Whatever, I mean, okay, maybe it's multiple agencies. Possibly. This is when we find out that Catwoman had actually taken the money that Killer Croc was trying to extort out of this kidnapping, and she was getting away. And while Batman is chasing after Catwoman, he's trying to convince her to stop, but she's compelled to keep going. And it's at that moment that Batman's grappling hook line had been cut. We know that it wasn't Batman, and we know that it wasn't Catwoman, so it's setting up somebody mysterious in the shadows that might be involved with it in like a master of puppets sort of way. Instead of Batman seemingly falling to his death, as he probably should have, he instead lands on street level, on a street that's clearly stated to be Park Row. And if you know your Batman lore, it's Crime Alley. Like where his parents died. It's also explained at the end of this first issue that Poison Ivy is the one that's controlling the machinations for Catwoman, but maybe she's working with somebody else as well. Anyway, we pick up in the next issue as Batman is about to be jumped or murdered or unmasked by people that happen to be in Crime Alley. So bad things need to happen there. It's then in this moment of need that Batman is saved by what seemingly would be his last resort for comics of the Bat family at the time, being Huntress. Huntress is talking to Oracle and making sure that she's getting Bruce into the Batmobile, but she doesn't get a thank you at all. We pick up in the Batcave as Alfred is doing surgery, trying to put Bruce back together, and he's talking about how he doesn't know if he's gonna be able to patch up Bruce this time, like Alfred has done multiple times, and he talks about not wanting Bruce to be Batman anymore. Like, we're hitting all of the cliches. And speaking of cliche, even though Bruce is unresponsive and not able to actually talk to Alfred, he starts using Morse code and he taps out the name of Thomas Elliot. And this is the problem that I have with this series, especially from the second issue going forward. The book tries so hard to establish Thomas Elliot as this childhood friend of Bruce Wayne who Bruce just forgot about until right now. While I do have to give the book credit for the flashback sequences that really build out their relationship, it's also very distracting, and it's obviously showing who Hush is going to be. I mean, it doesn't need to be a very in-depth detective story to know that this is foreshadowed all the way in the second issue of the series. How do you not know that Thomas Elliot is going to be Hush, unless you have never read a detective story ever before? And the book does offer some red herrings to obfuscate who Hush really is, with killing Thomas Elliot like halfway through the book. But we still knew he was gonna come back. Why are we focusing all of this time and energy on these flashback sequences if it's not actually going to be Thomas Elliot? I do appreciate some of the red herrings, I'm not gonna lie. But whenever every single issue is pushing who it's supposed to be, it doesn't really match up with the Jeph Loeb detective stories like Long Halloween or Dark Victory that we had come to expect in the past. And instead, it feels like empty calories for this book. There's not a lot of substance. Now, artistically, Jim Lee was at a very good point in his career. I mean, obviously, we know about the notoriety that had come with his work at Marvel and DC, and then leading to Image in the 90s. I mean, this is the 21st century, and he wanted to make a big splash in his return to the big two, or at least the first blockbuster of Jim Lee returning to the big two. And it looks great. I mean, a lot of people always talk about All-Star Batman and Robin, with that being some of his most intricate pencils, but really I think that Hush can go bar for bar with it any day. I really do appreciate both the inking and the coloring on his work, and I think that the flashback sequences really make his art pop. But also just transitioning from the time of the 90s into now making it more of the widescreen comics that had been pioneered by Brian Hitch. But also in saying that, I do have to make a point about Jim Lee's character designs. Everybody talks about how Jim Lee had these perfect character designs for everybody on the X-Men. But then you look at his image work whenever he went over there and the Wildcats that he had worked on, none of those are very recognizable beyond like Grifter. So in my personal taste, I'm not a big fan of Jim Lee creating new character designs for any characters since the time that he went over to Image. I think that he kind of bought into the hype that was surrounding him, and he thought that he could do no wrong. And I honestly think that Hush is the starting point for that, because that is one of the most lazy designs that I've seen for a newly created villain. And honestly, I mean, it's a trench coat and a guy that's wrapped in bandages. It does stand out, but does that create a silhouette that's recognizable? Is this character actually interesting, or are we just asserting importance on him like how he fits within the history of Batman? And I think that this whole point about the character design being flawed is that whenever we jump to the last issue with the reveal that Tommy Elliott is Hush, we see his actual full character design. And I mean, it's so lame. It kind of looks like the grown-up Jason Todd Robin outfit that he had done like 2 issues prior, but now it's different because there's an H instead of an R. In saying that, I do want to bring this up later whenever we're talking about Hush 2, so just remind me, I guess. Throughout the story, we see multiple iterations and different sides of Batman. He spends a lot of the story coming to grips with his relationship with Catwoman and how she's going to fit within his life, and I do appreciate some of the melodramatics that are incorporated and how it's portrayed that everybody kind of just trusts Bruce and doesn't really scrutinize him all too much, but also they want to make sure that he's doing things within his best interests. So it does play up some of the aspects of soap opera that we had talked about in the intro. I think one of the most interesting aspects of the book is making it as accessible to anybody walking in off the street. It's realistically like a who's who for Batman, and being able to pick up this book and knowing generally enough to get by with each of the villains in his rogues gallery, but then also giving them a starting point to move forward from if you want to continue reading Batman comics going forward during this time. And this is where I say something that might be controversial, I don't know. Even though I don't like it as a reader that started reading realistically coming back to comics in 2015, I think this is one of the most accessible stories that are told. Is it deep? No. Is it really great? Also no. But you can get a grasp on what's happening and the widescreen comixification of Batman stories moving forward from this point. Another pseudo compliment that I'll give Hush is the fact that it doesn't overindulge in references, which will change whenever we talk about Hush 2. Again, remind me in a little bit. The story is able to keep pushing forward without getting bogged down in how it fits in continuity or what came previous and what stories the creators really liked and they wanted to homage, which also will change. But that is something that I was appreciative of, especially during this new read through as I was going through each issue. I knew that for more or less, Loeb and Lee knew generally the best aspects and the new direction actions to take most of the villains, most of the supporting heroes, and more specifically Batman. But they also forgot to set up a compelling villain. So like I had said a minute ago about the telegraphing of Tommy Elliot being Hush, he also doesn't have a lot of depth. So the reason that Tommy Elliot hates Bruce, especially this far removed from their childhood, is that Tommy, as a child, orchestrated the car accident that would kill his father and would only injure his mother. And Bruce promised to Tommy that his father, Thomas Wayne, would save Tommy's mother. And now, as a obviously well-adjusted 30-plus-year-old, Tommy Elliot couldn't let that go, and instead he wanted both of his parents to be dead, so that way he could inherit this grand fortune that his parents would leave to him. And he's also jealous because Bruce's parents were gunned down as he was a child, and Tommy never got that. So he just wanted to be rich. So, story-wise, Hush is just a D1 hater of both Bruce and Batman, and wants to dismantle every aspect of his life, every relationship, every villain dynamic, and making sure that he's always questioning reality. But whenever his motivations are just, your dad saved my mom, who I hoped would die, that's not very compelling for this character. I feel like Hush as a concept would have worked a lot better if we did go back to the Jason Todd aspect, and instead of him being revived in Under the Red Hood, instead maybe if he was introduced at this point and he was upset because Bruce let him die and the Joker still lives. But no, instead let's create this new villain and new backstory to assert this new importance on Bruce and his childhood friend who Bruce wronged because he promised him as a child. I mean, I know that Batman's villains all are locked away in Arkham Asylum, so not all of them are going to be right in the head all of the time. But also, I feel like it could have been a little bit more complex for his motivations and why he hates Bruce so much. Now, before we wrap up talking about the first Hush story, I do want to talk about the Riddler's involvement. So it turns out at the end of the book that Riddler was actually working alongside Hush, and he wanted to use the Lazarus Pits to be able to cure a previously implemented, by way of continuity, brain cancer. And so now that he did this, he wanted to show that he was the best villain against Batman, and even working with Hush to find out his identity, with Batman then replying to these grand machinations that he just volunteered, and also showing his cards that Riddler knows that Batman is Bruce Wayne. He replies by saying, "What time is it when an elephant sits on a fence?" And the way that Riddler replies is almost annoyed. He knows that. He knows that it's time to get a new fence, because everyone knows that. And Batman says, "Riddles are your compulsion, your addiction, and a riddle that everyone knows the answer to is worthless." Basically saying that if the Riddler outs his identity, then knowing the secret identity of Batman means nothing. And this love triangle, well, if we're gonna be honest, it's more like a hate triangle between Batman, Hush, and the Riddler will be expanded upon in Hush 2, but just so much worse. Now, after Hush had been wrapped up, like his bandages, Hush had a couple more appearances in the series Gotham Knights, playing a minor role in that until he was introduced in Paul Dini's run of Batman, with both Heart of Hush and House of Hush. And it was at this point in my reading that I grew to appreciate Hush. Now, the establishment of the foundation that was done by Loeb and Lee was nice. It was a good foundation, but I don't feel like I really clicked with Hush until I was reading the books by Paul Dini and Dustin Nguyen. I feel like they established something deeper to the character and asserting more of the motivations, tying in what we knew from the original series, but then also giving depth. Why did he hate that his mom was still living? Why did he grow to hate Bruce Wayne so much? Why did he become a supervillain? Those are all aspects that Dini and Nguyen all explored in those books. And that's why I liked Hush for a little while. Now, some people may be familiar with Hush based on the adaptations that he's appeared in, specifically the animated movie that came out in 2019, or his inclusion for the Arkham games, both City and Arkham Knight. And I'm not going to get too into the weeds on any of the various adaptations of Hush, one, because I don't care, and two, because this is a comic book channel and not a comic book adaptation channel. But in saying that, I feel like any iteration that he's appeared in, it's more of the creative team that's behind the adaptation basically winking and nodding to get some sort of comic book reader cred. Now, the most recent adaptation or seemingly Easter egg happened in The Batman that came out in like 2023. And in that film, with the Riddler's primary goals to take down Bruce Wayne and the Gotham elites that had bankrupted both Gotham and distorted his way of living as a child. And so Gotham made him into who he was, and he must take it out on everybody else. And a lot of YouTube channels that specify in theories have all pointed out that in some of the scenes it says Hush. So people think that in the subsequent films, Hush is going to be introduced. And I have one question: why? What are we gonna get from a Hush adaptation that we didn't already get from the Batman 1? What is going to be more gripping of a story? Now we see it from a different perspective. Now we don't see it from the poverty class, but we see it from someone in the upper echelons and a childhood friend of Bruce Wayne coming to attack him. But the problem is also that he doesn't have a rogues gallery, and he doesn't have a bat family. He has no real relationships with anyone beyond Catwoman and Jim Gordon. So why would you want Hush if the whole utilization of Hush is to make Batman guess his relationships with everyone, and he doesn't have relationships? So you want him to just like second guess Jim and Alfred throughout the entirety of the movie? That doesn't sound interesting to me. And speaking of not sounding interesting, let's talk about Hush 2. October 19th of 2024 will always remain in my mind because that's when we found out and had the announcement for The New Gods coming out with Ram V and Evan Cagle. But also on that same day, it was announced that Hush would have a sequel coming out, written by Jeph Loeb and illustrated by Jim Lee. And also I made a very funny post about the title of the book. Now you might be asking, what was Jeph Loeb doing up to the point of October 19th of 2024? And oh my sweet summer child, let me tell you, Jeph Loeb would pop back and forth between Marvel Comics and DC Comics for a little while. And that is until Netflix was starting up a little show that you might be aware of titled Daredevil. They brought on Jeph Loeb to be the Kevin Feige of the Netflix Marvel Universe. And it didn't always go well. Daredevil did have some great seasons. Jessica Jones kind of tapered off towards the end there, but it did get me into reading Alias that I mentioned in the introduction. Iron Fist was... and Luke Cage was actually pretty good for both seasons, but the second season being my favorite. And I'm sure you already know this, but the Marvel Netflix shows slowly came to an end with each of the shows getting canceled. Now Disney would have the rights to make any of their shows and continue Daredevil and not Jessica Jones or Heroes for Hire. Marvel, what are you doing? So anyway, in response to all of these shows slowly coming to cancellation, there was a great fan campaign that was trying to get Disney to pick back up Daredevil and continue it over at Disney Plus. So during 2020, as everybody was locked away and the fan campaign was seemingly successful, they had this victory lap for "We saved Daredevil." And there was one aspect that had people starting to turn their heads. Roll the clip.
There was a previous storyline that many of the writers who I adore, I love them. They gave me privy to a storyline that was supposed to go, they had planned for months to write, implement into shooting, but they were prevented. I'm kind of reluctant to say this, but I'm going to take it. I'm going to take this moment, but I have to because I just have to. I'm not into really protecting, certain things anymore, but Jeph Loeb told the writer's room not to write for Nobu and Gao, and this was reiterated many times by many of the writers and showrunners. Nobody cares about Chinese people and Asian people. There was 3 previous Marvel movies, a trilogy called Blade that was made where Wesley Snipes kills 200 Asians each movie. Nobody gives a shit, so don't write about Nobu and Gao. And they were forced to put their storyline down and drop it. I have privy to that storyline because he explained it to me, and they were very apologetic that they couldn't follow through with it, but their hands were tied.
So, what did we learn? Maybe old weird white guys that dress like this are probably not good people? Maybe. And subsequently after this panel, there started to be discussions about Jeph Loeb and his perceived racism towards Asian people. And now some of you who like to be in my comments will probably be typing,
"But Kirby, he works with Jim Lee, so obviously he can't be racist to all Asian people."
Gross. Obviously, the relationship between Jeph Loeb and Jim Lee is going to be a different scenario. Specifically with Jim Lee now being over all of DC. I mean, in this day and age, Jim Lee is practically the corporate suits that he was fighting against previously. So the power dynamic between Jeph Loeb and Jim Lee is going to be lopsided in favor of Jim Lee. And whenever Jeph Loeb has any amount of power over others, he'll make his racism known. So in preparation for Hush 2 to be coming out, DC did a blitz for as much marketing as humanly possible for this series. And it worked out. It was announced leading up to Hush 2's release that there were 400,000 pre-orders for that book, which in comparison to know how much of a hit that is, Absolute Batman #1 had a similar amount. Now, none of the publishers are very much open about how many sales that they do, but if they have a big enough number, they're probably gonna flaunt it. So DC put all of their marketing budget into pushing this new Batman book. What a novel idea of DC to do that with Batman. Now, if only they did that with any other character that had an ongoing instead of cut at the knees at 6 issues. Looking at you, Mr. Terrific. So yes, the marketing campaign was successful, and it led to a lot of sales for Batman 158 leading up to the time of release. But a marketing campaign can only be as successful as how good the book is and its standard of quality. So let's talk about Hush 2. The first entry and issue of the Hush 2 storyline debuted in March of 2025. There's been 5 issues of Hush 2 that's released up to this point. And not only that, Hush 2 is going to be split into 2 separate installments. Jim Lee can't keep up with the amount of work that he's supposed to do while also he's a corporate suit at DC. Get out of town. So yes, at time of recording, there's only been 5 issues released. And for some reason, I feel like this is gonna go along the lines of All-Star Batman and Robin and not be finished. We can hope. So let's talk about the story so far and see if I should eat my words and say that Hush is the greatest villain of all time. Spoilers, it's bad. So do you remember whenever I was talking about Hush, the first story, and saying that it didn't get bogged down in references? Well, Hush 2 starts off with one of the references, with Joker putting clownfish in the reservoir. And that's all the book is going to be going forward. It's going to be referencing stuff that happened previously like it's new, or establishing itself in some kind of continuity, but really it just feels like a 3 Jokers situation where we didn't need this, and why are we doing this all over again? With the beginning, you automatically assume that this is just going to be one of the normal adventures between Batman fighting the Joker and bringing him in, and then we get to go forward. But this is not like your average Batman story because it's so much worse. Batman gets bested by the Joker and thrown into the reservoir with the smiling fish as they attack him. And instead of Joker making it out some way, Jeph Loeb and Jim Lee decided they needed to make new characters that could help out with Hush. So then we meet Silence, because I guess they looked up synonyms of Hush, so they knew that Silence was a part of that. Okay, and then we're gonna meet another one later. What is she gonna be called? Whisper? Oh, there's already a Whisper. Maybe Shush? Oh, I forgot about that one. I wonder what she'll be called. It's then revealed that Silence brought the Joker to Hush so Hush could torture him in a secret lair. Batman, assisted by Dick Grayson Nightwing and Barbara Gordon Batgirl, is able to track down where Hush has Joker. And you're never going to believe this. It's a reference. We see as the Joker is subdued in the old circus that he enacted the plot from The Killing Joke, and then given the opportunity to kill the Joker from Hush, which might sound familiar. We pick up in the next issue and showing that Batman decided to not kill the Joker. I feel like he's made this decision about 1,000,000 times, but I'll let it go on. And he brings the Joker to Leslie Tompkins to hopefully patch him up and make sure that this little guy is back on the streets and terrorizing people all over again. As Leslie is plugging away at the holes in Joker's body, Batman drifts to sleep. And then I think it's supposed to be a reference to Batman 89 with the Joker killing the Waynes. So yeah, we just as many references as we can possibly fit into that bad boy. Leslie wakes him up and says that there's only so much that she can do to quote unquote fix the Joker, and he needs to be taken to a hospital, which obviously can't happen, and can't be taken to Arkham Asylum. So you know what that means. We're going to the Batcave. So as Batman is sitting in the Batcave and he's looking at his one true love, he kind of drifts away in thought. And that's whenever a gun is pointed at the back of his neck with the letters RH. Now I wonder who that could be. Maybe Roy Harper. Reverse Hush. Okay, I'll let it slip. It's actually Jason Todd, who is now the Red Hood and very much alive, compared to whenever he appeared in Hush. And this Jason Todd is not happy that Batman doesn't want to kill the Joker. So they start fighting. You know, Red Hood has guns, and Batman is notoriously never using a gun. Oh, he does. Okay, so I guess because it's not a kill shot? No, he shot at the head. Okay. We then have a standoff between Red Hood and Batman as they both point guns towards the other. And I mean, you can obviously understand why Red Hood would be mad. But why is Bruce like, yeah, dude, the guy that killed you before, he's here and he could die if I just backed away. But one, I'm not going to let that happen. And two, I'm not going to let you get the satisfaction of killing him. And then he talks about Jason and the crowbar incident, which is one of my greatest pet peeves whenever it comes to Jason Todd. He did not die because of the crowbar. That is an iconic aspect of his death and in that story. But the guy got blown up. Nobody remembers that he got blown up to the point where he was running around with a crowbar in his arsenal to hurt people as he was Red Hood. But I mean, I guess you can't run around with bombs all the time, so fair enough. It's after a slightly wordy conversation between Batman and Jason where they both have guns pointed towards the other. I still can't believe I'm saying this, but the tensions start to go down, you know, after referencing the death in the family once again. And then Jason just says, hey, I still want to kill the Joker. And he hits him with his gun. And Batman is now knocked out. It's then that we pick up in the clock tower with Nightwing and Batgirl as they're talking about what to do next. And seemingly there's new players coming to town. And then it's revealed that The Riddler is in the clock tower, and he's assisting Nightwing and Batgirl. And let me tell you, it's one of the worst character designs that I've ever seen. And I saw Suicide Squad in theaters in 2016, so I know bad. When Bruce wakes up from being pistol whipped by one of his wards, he finds out that Jason took the Joker. Man, I wonder what's gonna happen next. He's working with Hush, right? And that is revealed in the next issue in the most clunky dialogue way of putting it imaginable. I understand. Red Hood is now working with Hush. We know that. He wants to get back at Joker for killing him. It's justified. And Hush wants to get back at Batman for his dad not save... whatever. Then we cut over to Jim Gordon, because I think everybody should be asking, whenever Jim Gordon is not on the page, what's happening with Jim Gordon? So we pick up with him as he comes home and entering seemingly an apartment, and he has a little iPad that's sitting on a mount with a little note that has a little bat on it, so he knows that it's from his bestie. It shows that Batman had the opportunity to kill the Joker and he didn't do it. You know, like what happened in the first Hush story. So anyways, Jim Gordon's like, I don't care, and he presses the only button that's on this iPad, and it's a power button for some reason, where the old iPads used to have like the home button. Well, this one doesn't have that. Instead, he presses it and it explodes in his face. Whoa, look at that new technology. It's got bombs in there. Maybe Red Hood should run around with iPads. So after this, we pick up with the Riddler, Nightwing, and Batgirl, as the Riddler basically says, it's better to work with you guys than not work with you, and I'm kind of scared about whatever Hush is doing, so why don't we team up? And they do, for some reason. Batman arrives to Wayne Med Tower, where he's looking into the specific blade that Hush had, and he's trying to get to the bottom of it to find out where Hush is. Well, he goes in through the window like you do, and he talks to this one lady, and it turns out that she's working for Hush and her name is Armory. That doesn't make much sense. That's not within the motif of Hush and Silence. She just is an armory. Okay. Whatever. Moving forward, Nightwing tracks down Red Hood to an abandoned lighthouse where Jason is hiding out with the Joker, and Dick tries to talk him down about what exactly he's doing and why are you going against the family, like, you know, we're not supposed to kill the Joker, with Jason just saying, dude, Batman's lost it, he's gone crazy. And of course they fight it out until the moment it's revealed that the Joker is back and kicking, and he's taken Red Hood's guns, the two things that he's known for, and he has them both up for gunpoint. So now not only do we get a sequel to Hush, the critically acclaimed story from 2002 to 2003, but now we also get a sequel to A Death in the Family. Maybe The Death of the Family. Oh, that's been done? It was done in the New 52? It was done by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo? Okay, well, maybe we're not going to do a sequel to that, but we're going to reference the hell out of it. We then cut back to Batman as he's battling Armory, the newly created goon of Hush, and then we see our new favorite guy, Silence, who is also beating the hell out of Batman. And crashing in through the window is Damian Wayne, Batman's son, and Bane for some reason. And if all of this wasn't enough, then Hush makes his grand entrance, and he's holding Damian at knife point. They begin having a brawl in the top of this tower when Hush, Silence, and Armory are able to make their escape. And Batman then looks to Robin, Damian Wayne, and asks why Bane is here. Because, like, it wasn't that long ago that Bane had kind of snapped Bruce's adopted father's neck, and it was kind of the fault of Damian. At least he blamed himself. So I think that both of them would have pent-up rage towards Bane, and Bane owed Damian one. So that's why. From that point, it's shown that Nightwing was able to save himself and Red Hood from the bullets that were coming from the Joker at the lighthouse, and they landed in the water somewhere. So seemingly both of them are doing okay. Batman arrives to the lighthouse with seemingly everything already taking place a long time previously, and nobody else is there. And so he goes to the basement. And once he gets down to the basement, it turns out that all of the events of the story story are playing out over a board, and seemingly everything was orchestrated, or maybe it's like a master of puppets situation. From that time, we cut over to Jim Gordon as he's in the hospital because he had a bomb explode in his face, and he's talking to his daughter. I guess he knows her identity now. I'm not 100% sure or caught up on the continuity of what's happening in this story, but both of them know that the Joker has put them through hell, but they don't want him to die. At least they don't want to be the ones that kill him. And they also don't want Bruce to be the one to do it either. And guys, I have a perfect opportunity. Maybe have Jason do it. Maybe. We then have a flashback of Batman remembering the times that he could have killed the Joker, or he wanted to kill the Joker, but he didn't, and how much he loves Jim Gordon. And honestly, I mean, I also like Jim. I think he's a pretty cool character too. And then as he's reminiscing, a bomb explodes because Hush happened to be there, and he goes falling to his death once again. Again, mirroring the events of Hush in the first series. Did you read that? It's on shelves now. Instead of hitting the concrete and landing in Crime Alley, he's falling and he's saved by Barbara, who is obviously pretty upset with him because her dad could have died because of something that Batman did. She's pretty upset that there was a bomb that went off in her dad's face. Again, justified, just like Jason was. And as Batman is trying to fight her off, or at least stop the barrage of attacks, it's at that moment that the Bat family shows up and tries to put a stop to this scuffle. And this Bat family consists of Nightwing, Batgirl, Damian Wayne, Catwoman, and the Riddler? That's a riddle in and of itself. And I love that we're trying something new and something daring with this story. I mean, how many stories have we seen that Batman is put against the Bat family? And maybe he's at odds with them and he's fighting them because they don't live up to his code, or maybe even vice versa. Again, this has been explored so many times, I can't even list the amount of stories that this has happened in. So again, utilizing tired tropes of Batman stories to continue a sequel to a story from 20 years ago. But you know what didn't happen 20 years ago? The Riddler didn't say, and I quote, "Question, what time is it to expect the unexpected? Answer, Nigma time." This is a real book that's being published in 2025, almost 2026. The barrage of attacks from the Bat family and some of his villains, as well as Hush showing up because he's a pick-me, makes Batman have to run away, and that's whenever it's revealed that the Joker then has him at gunpoint. And that's where we leave Hush 2, or Hattush, or Hush 2. And what can I say about these issues? They're bad, right? Yeah, they're bad. And it's also a method for Jim Lee to do a redemption tour of his old white racist guy that was popular 20, 30 years ago. Yeah, of course, but also 400,000 issues were sold in the first part of this story. And we're gonna milk that cash cow for all it's worth. Okay, so I don't have a way to wrap up all of my thoughts regarding Hush and the stories in between and the adaptations or Hush 2, except for this. Hush still sucks. Alright, so that's enough out of me. If you like this video, give it a like, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. And one last thing, go read comics better than what I'm reading, apparently.